I think between now and maybe the summer, maybe the autumn, this is Russia's last chance to break Ukraine. And they're going to throw everything at this. I mean, they're going to, missiles, drones, running units in to try to overrun, infiltrate towns in the south and in the east. And if Russia's going to, out of a position of weakness, try to project strength in these next few months, Europe has to respond.
Joining us today is Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics at the University College Dublin's Clinton Institute. Welcome to our program, Professor Lucas.
Well, hello, Daniel. Hello, Sophia. It's so good to see both of you today.
Likewise, thank you. US President Donald Trump met today with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Davos. Trump describes the meeting, which lasted about an hour, as good. The talks come as Trump's foreign policy envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are going to meet today with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin in Moscow. So after this another Trump-Zelensky meeting, where do negotiations stand right now, and does this meeting change anything?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's what we know and what we don't know as I speak to you here on a Thursday afternoon. As we are speaking, President Zelensky is speaking to journalists, so there may be updates even while we are on air. What we know is that both he and Donald Trump have called this a good or a very good meeting from the standpoint of public relations. That's an achievement. We know how temperamental Donald Trump has been. We know how past meetings have gone with President Zelensky. So we know that this is not like last February in the White House with the ambush by the Vice President J.D. Vance. On the other hand, we don't know if this is as good a meeting as we had last April, when in the Vatican, Zelensky was able to get Trump face-to-face in the Basilica, and that pulled Trump back from that support of the Kremlin, where the U.S. had cut off intelligence, where the U.S. had cut off military assistance. What we especially do not know is whether they discussed the details of the Ukraine-Europe proposals to end the Russian invasion. Now that's important because we've actually got two different, as it were, proposals that are still circulating here. The Ukraine-Europe proposals, just a quick reminder, they pushed back an ultimatum that Trump's own envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who, as you mentioned, are in Moscow today, had developed with Vladimir Putin's top advisor, Kirill Dmitriev. That was in late October. The Ukraine-Europe proposal succeeded in pushing back Russia getting any more territory, especially all of the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine. It pushed back Russia trying to prevent security guarantees for Ukraine. So now we have security guarantees for Ukraine, which include U.S. participation through the leadership of aerial operations. It pushed back the Russian demand for split control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and it pushed back the idea that the recovery fund for Ukraine would be first for American profits rather than for Ukraine's recovery. Those four issues. The problem here is we don't know where we are in terms of getting the Trump camp on their final approval of that proposals. And that's complicated because of Witkoff and Kushner in Moscow. Are they going there to tell Vladimir Putin, look, these are the Ukraine-Europe proposals. These are what you need to accept, which includes a ceasefire on the current front lines. Or are they going there where Putin will say, no, here's what we had agreed with you last October. Here's this ultimatum. Why don't we get back to that? The problem is not only that Donald Trump is unpredictable, he's chaotic at the best of times. The problem is not only that he may be temperamental this week because he's had to retreat over the attempt to seize Greenland. The problem is that Steve Witkoff, who is a real estate developer, has been manipulated by the Kremlin ever since the start of 2025. Remember, they did a psychological profile on him so that they wanted to deal with him and not with Keith Kellogg. who was supposed to be the envoy for Russia. We also know that Jared Kushner tends to operate not on the basis of diplomacy, security, geopolitics. He operates on the basis of economics. Who can get money out of the deal? So let me give you one thing that we think is happening in that Kremlin meeting. Donald Trump, unwisely, but unsurprisingly, has offered Vladimir Putin a position on the Board of Peace for Gaza. Now, this actually has very little relevance to what people in Gaza are going through. It's a Trump ego project where he gets to be chairman of the board. At Davos today, there were 19 countries that said, yeah, we'll sign on to this to flatter Trump. Only 2 of them, by the way, were from Europe, Viktor Orban's Hungary and Bulgaria. Putin reportedly is going to tell Kushner and Witkoff, in exchange for getting on the Board of Peace, I'm going to give Gaza $1 billion, but that's going to come from frozen Russian assets in the United States. So Putin's not actually putting any of his money into this. Those assets are already frozen. But he's going to use that to try to flatter Witkoff and Kushner. And then once he says, oh, okay, here's that $1 billion, then he might say, let's talk about Ukraine now, and let's get back to the root causes of the conflict, which is Kremlin speak for give us what we want.
Let's cover also another interesting statement about the state of negotiations, because both President Trump and Steve Witkoff are really confident that they can make a deal over Ukraine war. President Trump said, quote, that the deal was now reasonably close to this success. And US envoy Steve Witkoff said Thursday that a lot of progress has been made in the Ukraine negotiations. According to Witkoff, it's a matter that can be resolved if both sides are willing. And according to Witkoff, negotiations are just down to just one remaining issue. So just one issue to be solved, and we have a deal, according to Steve Witkoff. Mm-hmm. What is your take on that? Is he right? Is Trump right? Is Witkoff right? Or are these just illusions and hopes?
Hey, Mr. Witkoff, tell us what that one issue is. You know, don't just tease us. We're talking security guarantees. Are we talking Donetsk? Are we talking Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant?
Probably territory.
What's that one issue? Yeah, or territory. You know, look. If I had $1 for every time that Donald Trump, Stephen Witkoff said we are close to a deal, I'd be a really rich man, and I wouldn't be talking to you because I'd have a Caribbean island I'd be enjoying the sunshine in, with respect. And Donald Trump came into office saying, 24 hours, we'll have a deal within 24 hours. Then it was like, oh, we'll have a deal in the spring, in the summer, in the autumn. So push all of that aside. We will have a deal soon, and get to the practical realities of what we are talking about here. If the Ukraine-Europe proposals are put to Vladimir Putin, the Kremlin will reject them. They will reject them because they want all of Donetsk. They have made this clear. They do not want to freeze on the current lines of contact in the east or in the south. Secondly, they do not want Ukraine to have any significant security guarantees. They have said that they will, in fact, threaten to attack European peacekeepers or European forces if they're in Ukraine to help with the security guarantees. They have rejected any type of arrangement in which all of the Russian frozen assets are used for Ukrainian recovery. And they have continually said, including this week, that they want the removal of the Zelensky government. Mr. Medvedev said that either a couple days or maybe even a couple days ago, I think, or even maybe yesterday. So the Ukraine-Europe proposals are not acceptable to Russia. Now, if Witkoff and Kushner come back from Russia saying, you know, we should get back to this ultimatum, and Russia should have all of the Donetsk region, and there should not be any security guarantees, that will not be acceptable not only to Kyiv, it will not be acceptable to Kyiv's European partners, their European allies. You know, eyes are open here, and I think you all already know this. that the only way we get to a resolution of this is probably in two ways. One is that Ukraine is finally forced to effectively surrender, and that is the Russian tactic right now. The Russian tactic is to break Ukraine's energy infrastructure so that Ukrainians who have resisted, they've resisted since 2014, but especially resisted the full-scale invasion for almost 4 years, the Ukrainians finally put pressure on the government to say, we just can't take this anymore because you all are freezing, because you all are in the dark. I've got news for the Kremlin, and I'm talking to a couple of Ukrainian folks here who are having to endure the power cuts, and you know a lot of people who are enduring the power cuts, and Ukrainians are not giving up. So let's put that one to the side. The second way this ends is that if Vladimir Putin can no longer carry out the military invasion to the extent that he is right now, not only with the escalated air attacks, but continuing to try to get some type of breakthrough on the front lines, and if he cannot continue to finance the invasion at the current rate that it's persisting, and if he is damaged by Ukrainian counterattacks, he might just have to give up, or he might be put in a position where he has to give up. But I don't think that's happening in the near future. So I think this is why I'm reacting strongly. It's why I'm reacting strongly to all this idea of peace around the corner, peace around the corner. What Ukrainians deserve is the truth. Ukrainians do not deserve false promises. They don't deserve false promises from their government or from the US government or anyone else. So that sense of realism, which is what the Ukrainian government comes back to. What do we need here? We don't need false promises. We need air defenses because these attacks will probably continue for the foreseeable future. We need equipment and weapons so that we can put pressure on the Russians. We need toughening of sanctions and the use of Russians' frozen assets to bolster us because that swings the economic balance in our favor in the war. That's what we should be talking about beyond the Ukraine and Europe proposals when they are probably rejected by the Kremlin.